What happens when a prince walks into Good Morning America expecting adoration, and instead faces accountability? Prince Harry sat across from Michael Strahan in what was supposed to be a routine interview until everything fell apart. The tension built slowly, masked under polite smiles and measured tones, but it exploded live on national television when Harry's composure cracked and his arrogance took center stage. The cameras caught every second, the audience gasped, and by the end, Michael Strahan had done what no host ever had before. He ended the interview and threw a royal out of the studio. The Good Morning America studio glowed with its usual early morning warmth. Cameras rolled smoothly across the polished floor, lights reflected off gleaming set pieces, and producers whispered last-minute cues through earpieces. On one side of the iconic curved desk sat Michael Strahan, calm, collected, every inch the professional broadcaster. On the other, adjusting the cuff of his navy blazer and glancing at his reflection in the monitor, sat Prince Harry. He looked restless, his expression taut, the faintest smirk playing on his lips. "Prince Harry," Michael began, smiling warmly for the cameras, "it's an honor to have you here this morning." Harry nodded curtly, his voice clipped. "Pleasure," he said, though it didn't sound like he meant it. Michael continued, unbothered. "You've been in the U.S. for a while now. A lot of people are curious. How's life treating you on this side of the pond?" Harry shifted slightly in his chair. "It's refreshing," he said. "Less noise, fewer expectations. Here, I'm just myself, free from the old circus." The studio audience gave a light, approving chuckle. Michael smiled. "I can imagine that must be a big change." He paused, then added carefully, "But some might say the circus followed you here. Netflix deals, books, interviews. You've been quite visible since leaving royal life." Harry's eyes flicked upward, the smirk fading. "Visibility doesn't mean the same thing as exploitation, Michael," he replied coolly. "I'm telling my story. People have told theirs about me for years. I think it's fair that I get the final word." Michael's tone remained even. "Absolutely. But when you're in the public eye, people often feel entitled to respond, to question, even challenge your version of things." Harry's expression hardened. "That's the problem, isn't it? Everyone feels entitled to dissect my life, to make a headline out of every emotion I express." Michael leaned forward slightly. "I think people are just curious. You've spoken openly about wanting privacy, yet you've also shared deeply personal experiences on very public platforms. How do you balance that?" Harry let out a small laugh, not amused, more like disbelief. "You Americans love that word, privacy. You think privacy means silence. It doesn't. It means control. I decide what to share, when, and how. That's the point." The air thickened. Michael smiled faintly, aware of the edge in Harry's tone. "Fair enough. Though I think some might say it's a complicated line to walk." Harry crossed his arms, leaning back. "Complicated for those who can't understand the pressures of being born into a world where every move is recorded. You wouldn't know what that's like." Michael raised his eyebrows slightly. "You're right, I wouldn't," he said calmly. "But I do know what it's like to live under public scrutiny. I was an athlete for decades. I know what it's like to be judged by millions of people you've never met." Harry gave a tight smile. "Yes, but you chose that life. I didn't." That was the first shift. The audience murmured faintly. Michael nodded slowly. "True, but you're choosing this interview. You're choosing this platform. That means people have the right to ask, and you have the right to answer." Harry's jaw tightened. "Or not," he said sharply. A few people in the audience laughed nervously. Michael chuckled lightly, trying to keep the energy friendly. "Fair point. You've been very vocal about stepping away from the monarchy. Looking back, is there anything you'd have done differently?" Harry didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'd have left sooner." The words hung in the air like a dropped glass. Michael blinked. "That's a strong answer." Harry shrugged. "Honesty tends to sound strong when people aren't used to hearing it." Michael smiled politely, but didn't let it go. "And what about your family? Do you think those bridges can ever be rebuilt?" Harry's voice was flat. "I'm not here to talk about reconciliation. I've tried that route. Some people only love you when you play by their rules." Michael hesitated for just a beat before replying. I think a lot of viewers would say family is family, no matter what. Do you ever miss them? That did it. Harry's jaw flexed, his eyes narrowing. Michael, he said softly, almost too calmly, if you lost your mother the way I did, if you were hounded since birth, you wouldn't be sitting here asking me about nostalgia. The crowd went silent. Michael nodded respectfully. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to touch a nerve. I just think, Harry cut him off. No, you don't think. You assume. That's what the media does best. You all pretend empathy while you're secretly hoping for a reaction. Michael's smile faded now, replaced by a professional composure that looked almost mechanical. I assure you, that's not what this is, he said evenly. I'm just doing my job, asking the questions people want to understand. Harry gave a short, derisive laugh. Your job seems to involve making me look like the villain. The tension was palpable. Even through the cameras, the viewers at home could feel it. The slow unraveling of civility, the transformation of an interview into a standoff. Michael leaned back slightly, hands folded. I don't think anyone here sees you as a villain, he said calmly. But maybe they see someone who's still angry. Harry's eyes flashed. Wouldn't you be? He snapped. After everything I've endured, everything I've lost. Michael hesitated. Maybe, but anger only helps if it leads to healing, and I think that's what people want to see. You healed. Harry looked away, then back at him. Maybe I'm tired of being your redemption project. The cameras caught it, the flicker of resentment, the controlled fury behind the prince's gaze. And for the first time that morning, Michael Strahan's steady professionalism began to falter ever so slightly. The calm before the storm had ended. The studio lights felt hotter now. Cameras that once seemed invisible were suddenly looming, and the air carried that strange weight, the kind that always settles before something goes wrong. Michael Strahan maintained his calm posture, glancing down at his notes briefly before looking back at Prince Harry. He had weathered countless interviews, from tense political sit-downs to scandal-plagued celebrities. But this one felt different. It wasn't just discomfort radiating from across the desk. It was defiance. Let's shift gears a little, Michael said, his tone measured and friendly. You and Meghan have both spoken about wanting to use your platform for good. What does that look like for you now? Harry adjusted in his seat, crossing one leg over the other, exuding an air of practiced superiority. It looks like impact, Michael, real impact. We're building initiatives that focus on compassion, on mental health, on reshaping how people think about privilege and duty. Michael nodded, smiling politely. That sounds great. Though, if I may, some critics have said that while your intentions seem noble, the delivery sometimes feels self-centered, that your projects revolve around your own experiences rather than helping others tell theirs. The temperature dropped. Harry's smile vanished. Critics, he repeated, the word dripping with disdain. You mean the people who make money tearing others down? The ones who've never done a day of actual service in their lives? Michael stayed steady. I'm talking about journalists, commentators, and everyday viewers who follow your story. Many respect what you do, but others feel... Harry interrupted sharply. Others feel what? That I should stay quiet? That I shouldn't speak about my life because it makes them uncomfortable? His voice rose. The audience, sensing the rising tension, shifted uneasily. Michael held his ground, lowering his voice slightly. No one's saying you shouldn't speak, Prince Harry. But when you share so much publicly, people are going to have opinions. That's part of the trade-off. Harry scoffed. Trade-off. Funny word for exploitation. Michael blinked. Exploitation? Harry leaned forward, his tone sharpening. You're part of it too, you know. He gestured around the studio, the cameras, the crew. This entire system profits off my pain. You all get your headlines, your viral clips, your ratings, and then you ask me why I seem defensive. A few audience members gasped. Michael exhaled, visibly trying to stay patient. Harry, I'm not profiting off your pain. I'm doing my job. This is a conversation. Conversation? Harry laughed bitterly. No, it's an ambush. You've clearly come here with an agenda. Michael sat up straighter, voice steady but firmer now. There's no agenda here, Harry. These are questions any journalist would ask. Harry shook his head, running a hand through his hair. No, these are the same tired narratives about my family, my wife, our choices. You people are obsessed. The word you people hung heavy. The audience murmured. Michael inhaled slowly. I think our viewers are just curious. You've been open about leaving the royal family to live freely. Yet you've done documentaries, interviews, books. Doesn't that keep you in the very spotlight you say you're escaping? Harry's eyes flashed. You think you're clever, don't you? Sitting there with your polished tone and your teleprompter questions. You think you can trap me with your word games. Michael blinked, then smiled faintly. I don't need to trap you, Harry. You're doing a fine job of that yourself. The crowd reacted, a mix of gasps and muffled laughs. It wasn't mockery, but it cut through the tension for a moment. Harry didn't appreciate it. His posture stiffened, his knuckles whitened. That's funny to you? He said sharply. Michael shook his head calmly. No, it's just... Sometimes honesty sounds like humor when people don't expect it. Harry leaned forward, glaring. You think you're above me because you're an interviewer? Because you can sit there and poke at my life like it's a sideshow? Michael frowned slightly. Not at all. I'm asking questions that everyone watching would ask if they were sitting in my chair. You came here to talk, and I'm giving you that space. Harry's voice dropped, low and biting. I didn't come here to be interrogated. Michael matched his tone, unwavering. This isn't an interrogation. It's accountability. There's a difference. A hush fell over the studio. Harry gave a small, sarcastic clap. Accountability, right. That's rich, coming from a morning show host. Michael smiled, a thin, polite, practiced smile. And yet, here you are, on a morning show. The room went still again. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or hold their breath. Harry's jaw clenched. He leaned back, looking away for a moment. You people love to twist things. You take vulnerability and turn it into ammunition. I talk about trauma, and suddenly I'm whiny. I talk about mental health, and suddenly I'm hypocritical. Michael nodded slowly. That's tough, but you can't control interpretation, Harry. Only your reaction to it. Harry's eyes snapped back to him. That's the kind of self-help garbage people pay to hear from someone who's never actually suffered. Even Michael's patience faltered at that. He leaned forward now, his usually calm voice sharpening. You don't know what I've been through, and I won't pretend to know what you have. But attacking me doesn't make your story more believable. It just makes you look defensive. Harry's expression changed, a flicker of panic quickly buried under anger. I'm not defensive, he snapped. I'm just sick of being painted as some spoiled prince who doesn't understand the world. Michael exhaled. Then show people who you really are? That's why you're here, right? Harry glared. You want me to perform? To play the reformed royal for your morning ratings? Michael's voice stayed calm, but firmer now. I want you to be honest, not perform, not attack, just talk. Harry gave a bitter laugh, shaking his head. You don't want honesty, you want sound bites. And what do you want? Michael countered softly. Harry hesitated. To be understood, he said finally. Then stop fighting everyone who tries, Michael said, his tone low and measured. That line hit like a hammer. The audience murmured again, this time louder. It was clear who was holding control of the room. Harry's face turned red. He looked down briefly, then back up. You think you can psychoanalyze me on air? Michael met his gaze. No, but I think the audience can see what's happening all by themselves. And there it was, the moment the interview officially started to unravel. Harry sat back in silence, jaw tight, eyes burning with a mix of pride and fury. Michael adjusted his notes, unshaken. The next question was ready, but something in the prince's glare warned him. They were past the point of diplomacy. Whatever came next wouldn't be conversation. It would be collision. The studio air felt heavy, electric, the kind of tension that made even the camera operators hesitate to breathe. Michael Strahan straightened his papers again, not because he needed to, but because it gave him a moment to keep his composure. Prince Harry, seated across from him, looked coiled, his jaw tight, fingers twitching slightly as if he were forcing himself to stay still. Let's talk about something positive, Michael began gently, his tone like a bridge trying to rebuild itself. You've done a lot of work around mental health. Your recent campaigns have encouraged millions to open up about trauma. Do you feel like You're making the impact you hoped for? Harry let out a humorless laugh. Impact? You tell me, Michael. Every time I speak about mental health, I'm accused of exploiting it. Every time I talk about trauma, someone accuses me of playing the victim. Michael nodded slowly. I think people can appreciate your advocacy and still question how it's presented. There's a difference between raising awareness and... Harry cut him off, voice rising. And what? Making it about myself? I've heard that one before. I wasn't going to say that, Michael replied calmly, but I think the public perception... Harry slammed his hand on the table, making the microphones rattle. Public perception, he barked. That's exactly the poison I escaped. I'm not living my life for tabloids or Twitter threads or bored morning show viewers. The audience gasped audibly this time. One producer motioned to lower the audience mics, but it was too late. The tension was on full display. Michael exhaled slowly, setting his papers aside. Harry, he said evenly, no one here is attacking you. But when you come on a show like this, people expect honesty. You're a public figure. It comes with questions. Harry's tone dripped with sarcasm. Honesty? Please. You don't want honesty. You want entertainment. You want your little viral clip of the angry prince. That's not true, Michael replied, his tone still steady, but visibly firmer now. You agreed to this conversation. I've shown you respect since you walked in here. Respect? Harry leaned forward, eyes blazing. You call this respect? You've been throwing cheap shots since the first question, asking about my family, my choices, my wife. None of that is respect. Michael kept his voice level. I'm asking the same questions everyone's asking. That's what journalism is. Harry smirked, but it wasn't amusement. It was contempt. Journalism, right. That's rich coming from a former football player turned talk show host. The insult landed like a slap. A few people in the audience murmured in disbelief. Michael's jaw flexed. He didn't respond right away, instead taking a slow, deliberate breath. You're right, he said finally. I'm not a royal or a soldier or a prince. I'm just someone who worked my way up from nothing. And I treat every guest on this show the same way, with respect and fairness. That's more than can be said for how you're treating this crew right now. Harry blinked, startled that Michael had fired back. What's that supposed to mean? Michael's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. You've been dismissive, rude, and combative since the moment this started. My staff has bent over backwards to make you comfortable. You've insulted the audience, the show, and now me. And for what? Because someone dared to ask you about your own words? Harry shifted in his seat, clearly agitated. You don't understand what I've lived through. You're right, Michael said quietly. I don't. But maybe that's the problem. You've convinced yourself no one can understand you. So you push everyone away the moment they try. The audience was dead silent now, every camera locked on Harry's face. His composure was slipping, visibly. Harry's voice cracked slightly. You think this is easy? You think I want to sit here and defend myself to people who've never walked a day in my shoes? Michael leaned forward. No one's asking you to defend yourself. We're asking you to connect. That's what this was supposed to be. A chance to show people who you really are. But instead, you're proving every headline right. Harry's face darkened. You think you know me? You think because you read a few articles you've got me figured out? You have no idea who I am, Michael. You never will. Michael didn't flinch. Then show us. Don't yell, don't deflect. Just be real. Harry's laugh was bitter, almost trembling. You want real? Here's real. I've been betrayed by the people closest to me. I've watched the press tear apart the woman I love. I've buried a mother who died because people couldn't get enough of headlines. And here I am again, sitting across from another man in a suit trying to twist my pain into a segment. The words hit hard. Even Michael's face softened for a brief moment. Harry, I'm sorry for what you've gone through, truly. But that doesn't give you the right to take it out on everyone who asks a question. Harry shook his head. You don't get it. You never will. Americans pretend to care about empathy. But the second someone like me speaks up, they call it whining. Michael replied quietly. No one called you a whiner, Harry. But you're not doing yourself any favors right now. Harry's tone turned venomous. You think you can lecture me about image, about perception? You're just another cog in the same system. All smiles on camera, but the second the lights go off, it's all business. You're no better than the tabloids. That was it. Michael's expression finally hardened. His voice, though calm, carried an unmistakable authority. "Enough," he said firmly. Harry blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said enough," Michael repeated. "You've made your point, several times, and I've let you speak, even when you were disrespectful. But I won't sit here and let you insult me or this show." Harry leaned forward, fury flashing in his eyes. "You can't talk to me like that." Michael stood up slowly, towering over the desk now. "Actually," he said, "I can. Because right now, you're not a prince. You're a guest, and as long as you're on this set, you play by the same rules as everyone else." The audience erupted in quiet shock. Whispers, gasps, a few nervous claps that quickly died down. Harry stared up at him, his chest rising and falling fast. "You think you can kick me out? Do you know who I am?" Michael didn't hesitate. "I know exactly who you are, and I also know what kind of behavior crosses the line. You're close to crossing it." Harry laughed incredulously. "This is unbelievable." "No," Michael said sharply. "What's unbelievable is that someone who talks so much about respect shows so little of it when he's challenged." The camera caught it all. Harry's clenched fists, Michael's unshakable calm, the tension vibrating in the air. What had started as a simple interview had become something else entirely. Not just a clash of personalities, but a battle of principle. And by the looks of it, only one of them was still in control. The studio no longer felt like Good Morning America. The soft light that usually wrapped every segment in morning warmth now cut sharp and white, illuminating two men locked in silent fury. The control room was in chaos, producers whispering frantically into earpieces, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the train wreck unfold live. Michael Strahan remained standing, his posture straight, professional, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the restraint it took to keep from snapping. Prince Harry, still seated, stared up at him like a man cornered and refusing to back down. His voice, when it finally came, was low and dangerous. "You think this makes you look strong, don't you?" Harry said, his accent tight with rage. "Kicking a guest off your little show, putting the big bad royal in his place. Is that what this is about?" Michael didn't blink. "This is about respect," he replied. "Something you've forgotten since the moment you sat down." Harry laughed bitterly. "Respect. Right, that's rich coming from a man who's made a career out of ambushing people for ratings." Michael tilted his head slightly. "You're confusing tough questions with ambushes. There's a difference." "No," Harry said sharply, slamming his hand on the desk. "You just think you can talk down to me because I won't play your American media game. You think I owe you explanations." Michael's tone stayed calm, but his words hit harder than ever. "No one owes me anything, but you chose to be here. You agreed to this interview, and the second you didn't like the direction, you turned it into a personal attack." Harry's voice rose, echoing off the walls. "Because your questions are insulting. You sit there pretending to care about mental health, about trauma, while you mock me on national television." Michael exhaled slowly. "No one's mocking you, but maybe the reason people don't take your advocacy seriously is because every answer you give sounds like a lecture. You talk at people, not to them." Harry froze. The words landed like a blow. His eyes darkened. "You think you can psychoanalyze me now? You, a talk show host, think you know more about trauma than me?" Michael leaned forward slightly, his tone measured. "No, but I know what accountability looks like, and right now, you're avoiding it." Harry's composure broke. "Accountability?" he repeated, his voice rising. "I've given everything up for honesty. My family, my country, my peace. And you sit there like some smug judge pretending I'm the problem." The crowd had gone silent again. No laughter, no coughs, no movement. Every word was a live grenade. Michael spoke slowly, carefully. "You know, I've interviewed soldiers who've lost limbs, parents who've buried children, survivors of things I can't even imagine. And do you know what they all had in common? Grace, humility, the ability to talk about their pain without turning it into a weapon." Harry's face went red. "How dare you compare me to people who don't get to walk away when things get hard?" Michael interrupted, his tone cutting like glass. You talk about suffering, but every time someone challenges you, you explode. You've mistaken privilege for persecution. That did it. Harry stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back with a screech that made everyone in the room flinch. His microphone cord stretched taut across his chest as he pointed at Michael. "You don't get to lecture me," he shouted. "You don't get to sit there in your fancy suit on your little morning show and tell me how to live my life." Michael remained calm, though his patience had clearly reached its limit. "Then why are you here, Harry? Why come on a show if you can't handle questions?" Harry was shaking now. With anger or humiliation, no one could tell. "Because I thought this was a conversation," he said through clenched teeth. "Not an interrogation." Michael straightened. "It was a conversation until you decided it wasn't." Harry's breathing quickened. "You're twisting everything I say." Michael nodded slightly. "I'm just repeating your words." Harry jabbed a finger toward him. "You know what your problem is, Michael? You think you're some moral authority because you smile for the cameras. But you're just another performer in this shallow country, pretending to care about the truth while you cash your checks and go home to your perfect life." The entire studio gasped. That was too far, even for live TV. Michael's face finally hardened. His voice, when it came, was calm but laced with steel. "Harry," he said evenly, "you need to stop." Harry laughed mockingly. "What are you going to do? Cut me off?" Michael didn't hesitate. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do." The studio fell silent. Harry froze. "You're joking." "I'm not," Michael said. "This interview is over." Harry blinked, incredulous. "You can't do that. I'm Prince Harry." Michael met his gaze. "Not here, you're not. Here, you're a guest who's forgotten his manners." Harry's face flushed crimson. "This is outrageous. I'm not finished." Michael raised a hand calmly toward the control booth. "We are." The producers cut the feed. The on-air live light flickered off, replaced by a hastily loaded advertisement bumper. But the cameras kept rolling silently, capturing every moment for the archives. Harry stood there, staring at Michael, breathing hard. "You'll regret this," he hissed. Michael didn't flinch. "No, I'll sleep fine tonight." The prince ripped off his microphone and tossed it onto the desk. "You people disgust me. You pretend to be fair, but you're all the same. Parasites." Michael nodded once, his tone clipped. "Then you're free to leave." Harry hesitated for a fraction of a second, realizing the cameras might still be rolling somewhere. Then, with a final glare, he turned and stormed off set, his footsteps echoing down the hallway like drumbeats of defeat. The studio stayed frozen for several seconds after the door slammed shut. Finally, Michael looked toward the crew, his voice calm but weary. "Let's take 5. He sank back into his chair, rubbed his temples, and muttered under his breath. "That might be the most exhausting 10 minutes of my career." The clip, of course, would go viral within hours. Headlines would scream, "Prince Harry storms off Good Morning America set," and "Michael Strahan ends royal interview mid-broadcast." Analysts would debate who was right, who crossed the line, who lost their composure first. But for those who had been in the studio, there was no debate. They'd seen it up close, the moment the prince's charm dissolved and entitlement took its place. And Michael Strahan, the man who'd kept his dignity in the face of arrogance, had proven that morning that sometimes the strongest move you can make is to end the conversation. What do you think? Did Michael do the right thing? Was he standing up for journalistic integrity, or was Harry pushed too far? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one of them, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most explosive interviews in TV history, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and tap that bell icon so you never miss our next breakdown of celebrity meltdowns, media showdowns, and the stories they don't want you to see.